For a country like India, nuclear power could have been a big thing, but the technology was not available, the cost was prohibitive. Maybe now with the SMR technologies, the small modular reactor, there would be some solution. So I think what we need to see is that our new energy transition needs to be reliable.
The biggest problem in this industry is in terms of how do you get this back for recycling. So when we talk about any of our consumer electronics which already have lithium-ion batteries, but how does it come back to a central location, right? It's not distribution, it's aggregation again.
Correct.
So it is a supply chain problem. That is where actually I believe there would be more of technology which needs to come into place along with some policies.
But the future is going to be multiple sources, which would mean that solar comes during the day, wind comes when there is wind, and all those kind of things. And there is quite a bit of challenge around this multiple sourcing. Good afternoon. Good. So this title, when I first saw the title, Sustainable Frontiers, the frontiers term, it kind of caught me into a bit of nostalgia. For some of you would have seen the series called Star Trek. Yeah? Where at the beginning of every episode, Captain Kirk would come and say, space, the final frontier. These are voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go after where no man has gone before. That used to be the start of that. Of course, the later version, there were multiple versions of Star Trek. The later versions, the opening statement changed to be more gender inclusive, where initially when he said where no man has gone before, it changed to where no one has gone before. But you will have to bear with us, it's an all-man panel today, so please bear with us on that. Now coming back to the topic, as well as I'll stick to the space and the spaceship for some more time. Basically, think about our planet. It is nothing but a spaceship which is moving across the universe. It is literally nothing but a spaceship moving across the universe, powered by the sun, right? It is powered by the sun, and equipped with a complete closed circuit things. What do you think the people in the space station, where do they get water from? The people in the space station, where do they get water from? It's completely recycled. And actually one of my friends, Aaron, he uses the same technology used in the spaceships to completely recycle building water. And he made me drink, last time when I met him, he made me drink a Kolsch beer made out of the building's recycled water, and it tasted good. So, sustainable input is also one of the key steps in terms of circularity. Now, before I ask my panel members to kind of comment on, let me put some thought process into the audience mind. How many of you know when was the first solar cell created? Any guesses? 1883. When was the first wind turbine? 1887. And when was the first electric car? 1888. Yes. And now, to top all this, When was the first fuel cell? Now, when I say fuel cell, people think it is still in the future, but when was the first fuel cell? 1839. Now, all this, if it would have been developed at the right time, I would not be standing here to do this session. But of course, we all know for all known, unknown reasons that didn't happen. And today we are here discussing about all these topics. So with that, let me kind of jump into the discussions today and asking the panel members here in terms of, they bring a wealth of knowledge here. So maybe I should start with Dr. Praveer, with you, is a basic question. We had the energy grid across the world, mostly from a single source or with a couple of sources. That used to be the way in which we have lived till now. But the future is going to be multiple sources, which would mean that solar comes during the day, wind comes when there is wind, and all those kind of things. And there is quite a bit of challenge around this multiple sourcing. So I want you to start with what is going to be the future of energy looking like, and what are the kind of sustainable challenges which you foresee?
Yeah. Thank you, Santhosh, and thank you, NASSCOM, for the opportunity to come and speak over here. Can you hear me?
Maybe this one?
This one? They told me that, can you hear this?
No. And now?
Can you hear now? Is it better? Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you, NASSCOM, for the opportunity. But first, let me, before getting into some of the changes that is happening, and I would say the disruption that is happening, there are two things that I wanted to give as a starting point. One is that climate change is a reality. It is not something which is very far off. We can see this every day. In last 20 years, the number of extreme weather conditions that we have seen globally or in India are far more that was seen in the previous 50 years. So I think this is a reality. And the second is that when climate change events happen, people have very short memories. People also feel that these type of things will happen in different countries and not in our country. So I think what we need to understand is this will happen everywhere. All of us will get impacted. It is not that it will happen in some other countries or some islands countries, but it will happen everywhere. In our homes, it will happen. Now, I think the power sector in India and globally has gone through a huge change. And this is the real disruption that has happened. Santhosh mentioned about some of the inventions which were done in 1800. In fact, the power generation was started by Thomas Alva Edison. He was the founder of this. This was in 1890s. And since then, the power sector had virtually remained the same. But the three big changes that has happened, one is that it used to be unidirectional. Now it has become multidirectional. And so this is the first disruption that has happened, where you are able to now generate in different places. So the decentralization is the first disruption. The decarbonization is the second one, where it is not only about decarbonization for energy usage, but also it is in mobility. And the third is the digital technology. Earlier, it was just flow of electrons that used to take place. Now it is flow of electrons and flow of data. And everything happens on real time. So this is the first big change that has happened. And for more than 100 years, this was not there. And that's where I think the ability to do distributed generation on real time, monitor that, its usage, its generation, and and thereby have a better control is something that we see globally. The second big thing is that when we talk of clean energy and the transitioning, it's not just about one aspect. And I keep on hearing people talking about, is it that it will 100% substitute the conventional, or is it that it is going to be partly substituting? Will we get 24/7 clean energy, or is it only that for a few hours in the day we will get? And I think my response is that we will get 24/7 clean energy. It is not that we will get only solar during daytime and wind during evening time, and early morning you will have nothing. We will have a mix of generation that will happen. The hydro will come during the night time or the battery storage. But number of these technologies are undergoing transformation and new technologies are coming. We have always been used to one sort of technology. Santhosh mentioned that when was the first solar made? The polysilicon was the original one. But very many new technologies are coming. Whether we are talking of organic materials, we are talking of thin film, we are talking of peroxides. We similarly talk about that if we have to make this power reliable, we need to have storage. And everyone talks about lithium ion. But lithium ion is not the panacea for all the challenges that we have. That is one of the chemistries. There are a number of other chemistries that work is going on. And I do expect that in next few years, you will have many more technologies, many more chemistries which would be there. And the third is that while these are the few areas that we know of, there are certain areas that we have been using it for many years. Somehow it has not gone and been used to the extent it could have been possible. For a country like India, nuclear power could have been a big thing, but the technology was not available, the cost was prohibitive. Maybe now with the SMR technologies, the small modular reactor, there would be some solution. So I think what we need to see is that our new energy transition needs to be reliable, it needs to have resilience, and it needs to have safety. And if we can take care of all these three aspects, then the disruptions that we are seeing will happen much rapidly. The world is now working towards that. In fact, the type of research that is happening globally in power sector, I don't see that sort of research happening in any other space. And I think with the type of deep technology work that is taking place in institutions and research labs globally, we'll have very, very compelling solutions which will be there much before the end of this decade. So I'm very confident that we have a good solution that will be available.
I definitely want to come back to you on one of the points on what you said about the technology part of it and improving the resilience and of the energy systems and how the whole IT-OT interface and how the future things can kind of span. But just to kind of Vikram, I just want to say, because he touched upon lithium ion and people think about the extraction as one of the key challenges around, whether we talk about EV or whether we talk about renewable energy. Extraction, people think, is going to be one of the critical concerns around it. So for me, if you can kind of talk about how do you reduce this extraction? You work in a space where you are trying to help people to reduce this extraction, and how in this new energy paradigm, how the kind of work which you are doing is going to help in that.
Sure. Thanks, Santhosh. And first, thanks to nasscom for providing this opportunity for me to speak here. I'm honored to be a part of this panel, especially with Santhosh and Dr. Praveer Sinha here. So, adding on to what Dr. Sinha was talking about, actually, like the way climate change is real, the material limitations are also real. There's only so much resources which are available, and we cannot forever grow. I mean, like, keep mining on for these resources. So, and the growth, if you look at the growth, like if you're talking about, especially about the energy storage, if you look at the growth, both for energy generation and growth, storage. So clean energy generation, if you were to look at like what really happened with solar, like until 2009, we just had like about 69 megawatt installed capacity. Today we are talking about like 77 gigawatt capacity, which is available like across the country. And the same thing is happening with lithium ion also. If you look at the total capacity, almost until a year back was about 2.9 gigawatt hours. So we are moving towards about 120 gigawatt hours. Globally, it is moving towards like 10 trillion trillion kilowatt hours kind of. So there's a lot of materials which are getting mined, and there's very less recycling that is happening. So many of the questions which you've asked, actually, many of the answers were in like 1800s. But when it comes to recycling, we have not really actually spent that much time and effort in developing recycling technologies. So it is happening on the go as we are speaking. And luckily, in most of the areas, when it comes to lithium ion or any of these critical metals, there are good technologies which are evolving, which have an extraction capacity of over 90%. So ideally, we should go towards more of recycling, and we should not be going towards mining. And especially with the emissions, like if you look at the emissions footprint, 50% of the emissions globally are primarily towards material extraction. So we can avoid all of that. We need to bring in recycling as a part of this ecosystem right from the start. It should not be an afterthought. Like if you look at in certain areas, like when you're talking about packaging waste and other things, it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
We are thinking about plastic recycling after like we have like large landfills which are filled up at this point of time. But here, because it's the early stages, recycling should be a part of it, and technology should be used as a part, as a key component to identify where these batteries are, how these come back.
Yeah. So while you did discuss about the batteries, the storage still remains as one of the critical. So my follow-up to you, what you discussed earlier, Dr. Praveer, is that I know Tata Power at some point of time, and I do not know currently, but you used to pump water uphill using solar and then release it to generate power during peak load. And so without the appropriate storage, and that sounds a bit Stone Age to people, but that used to be the way we can store energy. And and many of the renewables, like we said, solar, the sun, and requirement is there. Wind, we require the wind. Whether it is tidal, we require the waves. So the predictability around all these things to create a very balanced grid, which is required to run the countries, there is quite a bit of an IT interface which is required. And how do you see that, the movement around AI and all those things? Is that something which many of the energy companies are looking into?
Absolutely right. In fact, we earlier had a concept where large generating stations are set up, large transmission system, and you put the energy in the grid, and based on the usage, you would use the energy, and the plants would typically operate at 50-60% of their capacity. But the capability, of course, was 100%. But now with the technology which is there, and especially the smart grid technology, today the smart metering and the data analytics helps us to identify what is the consumption pattern of the consumers, and different types of consumers, whether it is C&I customers or it is residential consumers, even agriculture consumers. You can do the profiling of the consumption pattern, and you can then set up a generation capacity to meet the consumption profile. And I think many of the areas that we have been working is how do we ensure that our generation matches with the consumption, and the supply side is now, or the consumption side is now actually pulling what capacity additions that you need to do. So I think today the IT technology, and this is happening on real time, is helping us. So unlike earlier times when we did not have that sort of facility, everything was done manually. On real-time basis, now we are able to do the SCADA system along with the data analytics that takes place and the ADMS. We can do a much better load management. So I think today's, and also how do we push the peaking of power that takes place by incentivizing customers to use non-critical loads in off-peak hours. So I think today the demand response and some of the smart grid technologies that we have been able to successfully move a lot of energy based on the actual consumption pattern rather than just setting it up and using it for less period of time. In fact, very interesting data is that the top 10% of generation capacity in this country, and this country has an installed capacity of nearly 430 gigawatt, the top 10% only gets consumed for 100 hours, which is out of 8,760 hours is just 1%. So 99% of the time you don't use that energy, and if you can manage that energy in a much smarter way, then you don't have to create that much of installed capacity, that much of transmission system, that much of distribution system, and it's a sheer wastage of money that takes place, and it can be used in a much better and a much smarter way.
Yeah, and coming back to the circularity of that, and you know, in India, we have been kind of, with the Solar Alliance and all those things, we have been taking a lead in terms of the solar. But, you know, very soon we are going to hit into the reality of end of the life of many of these. And I was looking at it, there are two scenarios for this. One, they call it as the regular loss scenario and the early loss scenario. But in any of these cases, you know, it assumes, if you assume even a 30-year life period and all those kind of things, the estimates say that we would be expecting almost about an 8 million tons of waste, 8 million tons of waste by 2030. And we are looking into almost about a 78 million tons of waste from the solar industry by 2050. How well is the industry thinking about it right now? And I mean, what is the preparation?
I think if you see what is the waste today, we do it in coal, the waste from solar will be much less. It is 1/10 of the quantity.
Yeah, but the quality of the waste is different. Yeah.
So I think we will be still much better off. But having said that, that's where I think companies like Vikram, who are into recycling, and how do you recycle and reuse many of the material, and he mentioned that 90% of the material can be reused. I think there is a tremendous business opportunity which is there. Unfortunately, we have not reached end of the life for many of these type of equipments, but possibly in another 10 years, many of them will start reaching end of their life. And that is the time when I think we need to develop new technologies, how you can efficiently and effectively reuse the material and then reutilize it in the new facilities. So I think today the awareness level and both the science and technology is so developed that we will be able to efficiently do it and in a very cost-effective manner. And more companies like the one that Vikram has started will be there in the field, and we'll be able to do it in a much scientific way.
And Vikram, since Dr. Praveer has pushed it to you, so let me ask this question in terms of, you know, the preparation for that. One is extracting the useful material from the waste is one thing, but recycling it with a value proposition is a different thing. Do you think that we are talking about 2030 and the quantum of waste and all, do you think your industry is now coming to that stage?
So, like I said, actually, when we're talking about reuse and recycling of these products, like especially solar, battery and other things, it's evolving technology at this point of time. That's the first thing. Other thing is and the good part about these solutions is primarily that it is when a solar farm or solar array gets to end of life, when we're talking about 25 years, 30 years life, it doesn't lose all its efficacy. It is only it's still functional at around 80% capacity. So that can be repurposed, it can be reused again in off-grid scenarios, and even with the grid in terms of peak load shaving and few other things, it can be redeployed again when it comes to solar panels per se. And that can go through another life for several years. Same thing with batteries also, in terms of actually batteries. I mean, today, many of the battery manufacturers or even EV manufacturers are talking about warranties for about 5 lakh kilometers. And companies like Tesla have claimed that their batteries do not still have, at the end of their life, they'll have 80% efficacy. So even they can be reused, redeployed into secondary usage, like street lighting and several other things that can be used, for which it can be reused. But at the end of it, actually it will come to end of life per se at some point of time. In both cases, actually both for solar and battery, there is actually a decent recycling ecosystem which is evolving. Solar has actually dismantling and delamination, and with chemical delamination, they can be high quality solar cells which can be taken back again and they can be put to use for the new panels again. Same thing with lithium ion batteries or any of the lithium, any of these portable batteries also, same thing can be done with a resource extraction of over 90%, some claim even 98% in some cases. So we should continue to put this back into use again rather than mining. So it is possible. It's only that the biggest problem in this industry is in terms of how do you get this back for recycling. So when we talk about any of our consumer electronics which already have lithium ion batteries, but how does it come back to a central location, right? It's not distribution, it's aggregation again.
Correct.
So it is a supply chain problem. That is where actually I believe there would be more of technology which needs to come into place along with some policies, either something like deposit refund system where there is a small deposit which is actually collected. And when you give back the battery or when you give back that portable electronics, you will get the deposit back. But that will help a streamlined, a formal channel to get this material back rather than going to the informal mechanisms of recycling per se.
And in terms of this, when you set up Recykal, there was already a kind of a policy change which was happening with many of the waste, whether it is plastics or whether it is batteries and those kind of things. Are you seeing a policy momentum in terms of the renewable energy segment as well right now?
Yeah, actually, there has been a significant shift, policy which has been introduced last year. So for a long time, we did not have actually, for renewable energy especially, the solar was not a part of our e-waste management rules, whereas if you take EU, this is there for over 10 years now. So it has been introduced into the extended producer responsibilities or e-waste management rules, which requires producers to collect back the panels and ensure that it is recycled. But the major move is towards actually the battery waste management rules, which were introduced in 2022. So this require actually for portable electronics and EV batteries, 70% of these batteries need to be collected back by the manufacturers, producers and manufacturers at the end of life. So this is 5 years back, whatever batteries were put in the market, they need to be collected back. Those much of battery, that quantity of battery needs to be collected and recycled. Another major policy move which MOAF has brought in as a part of this regulation is that at least 5% of recycled material should be used in batteries starting 2027.
Yeah.
So which is a major move. If you look at actually, and it progressively increases towards 20% of the battery, the material which is used as a part of the battery should be recycled material. So that is a positive shift. That is going to push the industry, the policy doing its bit, and the industry actually taking over, and the economics coming as a part of this.
And in terms of circularity, for example, what the business he runs he kind of brings through a platform both the producers of the waste as well as the recyclers of the waste into a common platform. And so do you see as an energy producer now in terms of going into the end of the life and all those things, some of those kind of platforms would work?
Absolutely. In fact, just to add that what we are seeing is in batteries, there is a second use of the battery. So while automobiles require a battery with a certain level of efficiency and a charging and discharging cycles, for stationary applications in power systems, whether it is for renewable or in the utility space, you can use these batteries as a second use. And they have a much longer life over there because the cycles in which they have to be used are not as severe as required in mobility. So I think people are learning new ways of reusing some of these areas where you need to recycle or reutilize them and thereby bring further efficiency in their utilization. So what we are seeing is that it is providing new scale and opportunities to a lot of entrepreneurs to start something in areas which earlier was not there because the market for such products was not there. Now that the market for such products is coming, there would be more and more players coming. Like mentioned by Vikram that we had just about 5 gigawatt in 2015. Today we have nearly 70 gigawatts. So I think once more capacity addition takes place and more of end of life of these products come, we'll get more and more of recyclers who will reutilize them. And you know, in India, we always believe in reutilizing. You still see cars which are of 1960s and 70s. I come from Jamshedpur, so if you go to Jamshedpur, you'll still find many cars of 1970 vintage are still being used over there. So I don't think in India we scrap anything. We use it till the last, and I'm sure there'll be great opportunities.
I definitely would open for a couple of questions from the audience, but before I do that, no discussion on energy and circularity, all those kind of things is not complete until unless today we discuss hydrogen.
And we have time for only one question. So,
yes.
Audience, if you have any.
So I think I'll park it from there. Maybe I'll give that opportunity of the question from the audience if we have a question from the audience. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Sir, I come from a background. Am I audible?
Yeah.
My name is Joy Banerjee. I'm from ABB. And I come from a power background. So one of the basic problems that is not getting addressed properly is the... नहीं सुनाई दे रहा है? Hello? Sir, सुनाई दे रहा है?
हाँ, little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my question is around the grid stability.
Yeah.
That is one question which is not getting addressed maybe adequately, either at the policy level or at the planning level. And how to have the energy storage versus the energy generation versus the consumption versus the EV,
sure,
which is also a very transient load. Sir, from a Tata Power perspective, how you're looking at it?
So I think at every level this is being addressed, whether it is at the transmission level or at the utility level. This is being addressed. So this is not that today the grid is unbalanced and we are not able to address, whether it is reactive power or capacitors or statcons or whatever is required to do that. And in fact, the battery is the best stabilizer in the system because it's like a shock absorber in the power system. So I think the grid stability is not something which is a showstopper as far as our transition to clean energy is there or our transition to clean mobility is there. So EV chargings, whether you do 100 EV chargings or 1000 EV charging, the grid is a very stable grid. And if anything is required, it gets added and it is adequately planned and implemented. So I don't feel that this is something which we should be
over worried. Yes, this is something that we need to plan and do, but let's not get over worried about this.
So thank you, and I think one of the main things which is going to change in the future is the energy mix, definitely yes, and there is quite a bit of a technology play to answer to the question as well. For example, in terms of the IT interface to bring in these multi-sources and reliability, improving the reliability, there is quite a bit of IT interface around that as well. And we have been working with national grids as well as distributed grid systems as well. In this space. So thank you all for being, we know that this is the one of the last sessions on the second day, and sitting over here, hearing about one of the key things, what is going to define in terms of how the future of energy is looking like. And once again, thanks for the opportunity to the NASSCOM to arrange this session as well. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to NASSCOM YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.